In this conversation, Duncan and Greg Miller with Miller Brothers in Atlanta discuss the evolution of men's fashion, particularly for those approaching retirement. They explore how travel influences clothing choices, the impact of the dot-com era on professional attire, and the importance of dressing well versus dressing expensively. Greg shares insights on wardrobe essentials for retirees, including the significance of accessories and the need for quality clothing. The discussion emphasizes the importance of personal style and comfort in fashion choices as one transitions into retirement. Welcome to the Retirement Spy, where we are here to help your phase two of retirement go much easier by careful planning, non-financially, to live phase two as we need it to be, as we want it to be. Today, we're joined by a special guest, Greg Miller with Miller and Brothers. Greg and his brother Robbie have been fine haberdashers of men's fashion in Atlanta since 1996. And we're really proud today to have him on the Retirement Spy to talk about men's fashion, specifically for those people who are approaching phase two, with the idea in the back of my head of that old man walking on Miami Beach with the knee-high black socks and patent leathers and the Bermuda shorts that just make me cringe when I see it. Greg, welcome to the Retirement Spy.
Thank you, Duncan. Happy to be here.
Now, tell me how you and Robbie got in this business. 1996 was a while ago. Where was the passion? How did you get started with Miller and Brothers?
Well, we both started working in the clothing business as teenagers. I started when I was 16, worked for a local retailer that had multiple stores. And when I was in high school at Marist, I used to run up the street and I was the transfer man. And I would transfer merchandise between the stores every day after school. And that was my first job. And then I got to do a little bit of part-time selling on Saturdays. And then I continued to work there through college. I worked at a store in Athens when I was at Georgia, and I just kind of stuck with it. And I also worked in Chicago and in New York. And when I lived in Chicago, I worked retail, but I was given an opportunity to be a rep for Oxford Clothes, which is the handmade garment made in Chicago. And I was given a territory of the Southeast, which brought me back to Atlanta. Shortly after I moved back to Atlanta, the company was sold. It was Christmas. My wife was pregnant, and I lost my job along with about 90% of the sales force and support. And I was very, very worried. And my brother, who I'd worked with previously, had gone to work somewhere else, wasn't very happy. We just decided if we're going to ever do something, let's do it now. So somewhat out of necessity, we sat down at our dining room table and decided to do this. And we started out with what was mostly a custom clothing business. And you don't need a whole lot of money to start up with that, but that went well. And after a number of years, we went from, well, shortly after the dining room table, we got a small showroom, then we got a bigger showroom. And then in 2006, we were able to buy a building and expand to what we have today. And almost 20 years later, we've been in business 30 years later. We've been in business 30 years, 20 years in this building, and our business has really thrived.
You know, for those who've not been to Atlanta, not from Atlanta, come visit into their store in Buckhead in the upper end side of Atlanta. What you'll notice about Greg and Robbie is they create a clubby atmosphere. When you go into fine clothing, you can have a cocktail, you can have a Coca-Cola, you can watch the Georgia game on television. They really pride themselves on the relationships, and that's a tribute to their success since having been around since 1996. I need to stop by because I'm going on a 3-week cruise. And my understanding from you, Greg, is that nowadays people in our age are really looking to dress for success, but it's not for the boardroom. It's for that cruiser going on. Tell me where that's going nowadays.
Well, it seems as now that I'm getting a little bit older, as our clientele, we still have a broad range. We have people that bring in their high school kids to shop with us, which is fantastic. But as I've gotten older, our clientele, some of them, more my peers and a little bit older, are getting close to retirement age. And at this stage of their lives, they're traveling more, taking bigger, longer, grander vacations, whether it's with their spouse or their children and grandchildren. And when you go on these trips for, say, 2, 3, 4 weeks, you need clothing that will hold up, not wrinkle, performance, things like that. And people tend to have a little bit of that from maybe their golf attire, but there's, dressing it up a little bit, and you can use a little bit of that golf attire and incorporate that into what they're wearing. But a travel blazer that's a layering piece that's very comfortable. It could be knit fabric that you could wear on an airplane. As we get older, people get a little colder, something that's a layering piece that keeps you warm, but also something that will take you to dinner, and very practical, and you can pack light. And that's a great part of what people are buying, and it's important to them. And so that's a lot of what we do.
Quality is everything. Won a Regent Seven Seas cruise a couple years ago for 3 weeks along the lines of this topic. And Europeans dress much nicer, in my opinion, than some of us here in the United States. And so, to your point, you're going on an upper end cruise because you wanted to, or any kind of cruise. But if you're going to Europe, you're probably going to run into some Europeans. And gosh, you really don't want to feel out of place.
No. And fortunately, we were able to just go to Italy for a family wedding, and we had the extended family. And it is fun to see and notice what people are wearing. And tourists are easy to spot for the most part, but and you'll always be somewhat recognized, but trying to fit in without trying too hard is important. And yeah, we try and coach people on what they should take and what will make sense. And again, comfort is king, and everybody wants to be comfortable, but also comfort feeling and looking. And so that's really important. And everybody wants to enjoy themselves and not feel like a tourist, though we are all tourists.
Well, that's such a great point. I'm going to go backwards in time a little bit and then come back to the modern day. But I distinctly remember being a young professional that grew up in the 80s when we hit the dot-com generation of the year 2000s. Fashion tire changed. I came in the 80s where you wore a suit, you had braces, and the only thing the men had to vary for the most part was their pocket square, their ties, and their suspenders or braces if they did so. What happened with the dot-com revolution that kind of changed fashion as I remember it in the business world? Wax philosophically with me. What happened?
Well, people were working possibly from home or in an environment where it really didn't matter or people cared. And it became somewhat of a badge of honor, I think, to see how poorly or how sloppily I could dress. And, I'm a tech millionaire, and look at me. I'm wearing flip flops, shorts, and a holy t shirt. And that got to be, people took pride in that, but that just doesn't really work. That has evolved, and I guess a little bit of that still exists. But for the most part, people that are in those type of environments where they can wear what they want to wear still tend to wear nicer clothes, and it's a little more refined. It might be a more tailored t-shirt or a really nice knit shirt, 5 pockets, what have you. But that day of, I remember it and thinking, what am I going to do? What are we going to do? We got to fix this and make sure people understand that you are judged on your appearance, whether you like it or not. And some people can get away with that, but not everybody. And also, I think the novelty of that wore off to a degree for many.
No, I think so because we eventually returned to our closets and looked at what we had in there. And between all the ties, silk ties, and all the suits we had, we're like, we got to wear these somewhere. And if it's not work, we got to find a place. You and I were talking the other day that there are, as it relates to fashion and what to wear, what not to wear, there are no hard, fast rules on how to dress anywhere nowadays. Is that right?
True. And one thing I was thinking about what we were just talking about is that I still hear some men say, I loved it when we wore suits at the office because I didn't have to think hard. I just knew I was going to put on a blue suit or a gray suit. And it was, what tie am I going to wear? Or does this pocket square work? And it was, now people struggle and they don't know, they're not very comfortable. Many men, I mean, clearly some men have a stronger sense of style and love clothes, and some it's not as important, and they do struggle with what to wear to the office. And it is everything from performance, 5 pockets and a golf shirt, which so many people wear that, which kind of makes me cringe a little bit. But there are degrees of that. You can wear nicer things and look a little more refined. And I think Atlanta is, I always say, it's sort of a sport coat town for men. And we have a tremendous sport coat business. And I've even heard a couple people recently say, guys got transferred to Atlanta and they're like, quote, this is a sport coat town and I don't have any sport coats that works. That help. We love that. So, and build around a sport coat, make sure it's, something that makes sense that you could wear in most any environment, whether it's the office or going out. And so it is a little bit of everything. We still have some suit business too. Some guys, whether it's investment bankers, some attorneys, whether they're going to court or what have you. But there's a few other people who just still enjoy it. So kind of a, you know, I'm wearing a suit. I like it. It makes me feel good.
So give me a fashion tip. I think my idea of dress today is really dressing to my identity. And I think a lot of people are like that. So you want to, in phase two or even in phase one, if you're still working, you want to look presentable for the situation that you're in. You never want to be ignorant of that. I'll set you up because I think this is a softball. Today, with Atlanta being a sports coat type of town, it's also a denim type of town. So talk about men's fashion in particular for 60 plus. What does denim mean versus blue jeans, if I'm headed in the
Well,
right direction?
yeah, the general term we use is five pocket, and some people they've been around, and whether five pockets are jean style pants, but not necessarily denim. We do sell blue jeans. We don't sell overly distressed. There's a term called whiskering, which are all they're exaggerated, fakely distressed. They don't look good. We don't really care for those very much. But we sell some dark wash jeans, mid wash jeans, and things like that. But we sell them in lots of colors, weights, bricks, whether it's a performance for golf that people are actually wearing to work, which I don't love that, but people do it. So five pocket business is roughly um, 40% of our pant business, whether it's dress trousers, casual trousers, or five pockets. And so it's incredibly important. And some of them are as dressy as they're wool fabrics that can look great and can be dressed up and do look good with a sport coat and can even in some cases be worn with a tie. It might not be the most classic silk tie, but a textured tie that's seasonal, whether it's in the fall or spring, that's it's not as formal of a necktie, but still wearing a tie, which I really like, and we do a lot of that.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest lesson I got years ago. By the way, I was super intimidated about what to wear today with you. So I was myself and my identity wearing a
Wow.
golf shirt. But what I've noticed is you can't put on $1,000 blazer or a very expensive blazer and then put on your Levi's that you wore back in the 80s. It's the most embarrassing thing. It's almost along the lines of that Miami look with the tall, dark knee socks and the Bermuda shorts and the old guy fiddling down the beach. So to your point, the jeans are such a staple. Jeans, put that back. Denim are such a staple. So the matching of the jeans with shoes, with accessories and the blazer is what Atlanta is everywhere I go. Comment on that.
You're right. And it's done so poorly by so many
Thank you.
that people do need a little guidance. I mean, I'm not an expert in so many things, but this is something I do know a lot about and can coach people and help them and make it understandable and comfortable. We say we'll help you find your own personal comfortable style, which we aren't forcing anything on anybody. We make suggestions and show them, and there is a way to wear blue jeans more nicely, and where it is okay to go out to dinner in them, where you're not going to get turned away because you got holy jeans or you've got on a whatever it is that's inappropriate for dining out or whatever the occasion may be. And there is a way to wear blue jeans or other five pockets with a sport shirt and a sport coat, the right belt that goes with the shoes or the boots or the loafers or whatever it is that they're wearing, and even sneakers. Sneaker craze is huge, and that's still probably one area where men are having the hardest time saying, I can't pull that off, or I'm just not comfortable. And sneakers are the rage. I mean, and they run from what you see on TV, all those sports guys with suits, which we are not proponents of that by any stretch of the imagination. But we do sell a lot of different sneakers, but ours are a little more understated. And maybe a little bit dressier in a sense. And then but
I think where you're going is there's a difference between dressing well and dressing expensive. My
for sure.
interpretation on your jeans, and I've seen this, somebody came in and was complaining to the maitre d' that he had $1,000 jeans on and they were ripped up, they were holey, they were nasty, that just didn't look appropriate for the establishment they were going into. And, in Atlanta, most everything goes. I don't think there are too many restaurants or places you'll go with designer jeans where people say, I'm sorry, we can't have that. With the ladies, that's a different story because depending on what body parts they're showing, I guess. But so there is a difference between dressing well and dressing expensively.
Correct. And also, just because you're wealthy doesn't mean you have good taste.
Touche.
And there's a lot of people spending a lot of money that don't dress well, quite frankly, or don't dress appropriately. And that's why a lot of people come to see us, because it's not their comfort zone and they do need advice. And that's part of what we do at Miller Brothers. And we have a very diverse offering within, you know, the scope of better men's clothing. So we can, someone who's got a little more fashion forward taste, we have it, but that really classic guy, we can help him too and try and bring him along a little bit within his comfort zone and make sure, for any occasion, you're dressed appropriately because so
Yeah.
many people don't know how to. Just because they're wealthy doesn't mean, they're going to look good.
You said it so appropriately. We had an offline conversation that anything goes nowadays, but the challenge I see is, and we're a big athletic town. We've got a lot of athletes in Atlanta, and there are lots of money, and they're, as you say, walking around, and a lot of money doesn't necessarily mean good taste. And they're wearing $3,000 worth of athletic wear, but they're not welcome in restaurants because it's athletic wear. It's sweatpants. Yeah, I know it may be $3,000 tailor-made Nike special or whatever it may be. But even in Atlanta, they're saying you can't come in here with your warm-up outfit on, as I would call back in my basketball days. And it doesn't apply. So to your point, anything goes, I think up to an extent though. I mean, you have to draw a line somewhere.
Correct. Right. Agreed. And I will say that that's really usually not the guy shopping with us, but we see it. I mean, where our store is located, it's every walk of life. And there might be in the entertainment industry or what have you, or a professional athlete, and they have a lot of money. But then, yeah, they're culturally, they think that is what's acceptable, but where I generally go to dinner and what have you is just not what you're going to see or people are going to welcome.
So here's something I'm fascinated with. I know you and Robbie travel to look at your inventory and what you're going to have for the season and what you're buying. How do you take a look at trends and where the trends are going to stock your inventory for the brands that you want to have? I'm not asking the right question. How do you do what you do so that the supply you have is keeping your clients happy?
Well, because we've been doing it this long, we at least have a track record. We sell mostly and buy mostly things we like and appeal to people somewhat like us. And we carry high-end brands, but we buy it classically with a little bit of flair or interest. We push the envelope a little, but we also understand who our client is. And there are other places to shop for that more flamboyant type customer. And that it certainly exists in Atlanta. We know what works. We do follow trends, but we're not trendy. So we're, the super tight suit, super short pants. We never really did that. The look was shorter coats, very tailored. We do that. That is, we're kind of seeing that bounce the other way, that short coat, short trousers, super tight is going by the wayside and it's kind of going back. But we were never one extreme or the other. So we're going to move a little to the left or a little to the right, but always be classic in a sense. But we do like to buy fun stuff just to, push the needle a little bit and get some conversation going. So we'll buy some bolder things, but it all makes sense to a degree. I mean, when there's still people who come in our store and go, was everything side vented? We've been selling side vented clothing since we started for 30 years. So there are still some people that think center vents are like, I didn't know that. Or they still wear pleated trousers where that's not the norm. And pleated trousers have been out, if you will, for so long. Now that's almost become fashionable in a sense. That's runway type stuff. It's kind of goofy stuff that most of our customers wouldn't buy or wouldn't appeal to because it's such high fashion, which is not what we're doing.
No question. So our audience is geared toward people that are headed toward retirement and their need to change their wardrobe when they're not going to fill their 9 to 5 every day. How does a successful retiree rethink his wardrobe when he doesn't have to take off his pajamas every day, but he's going to because he still has to go out and about? Any pointers as it relates to the identity of running the multi-million-dollar empire or going to work every day and then just having to be a simple Joe in retirement?
What I think we see is people are stocking up more, buying more higher end casual clothing, maybe a little more golf gear, if you
Sure.
will. And I think I mentioned earlier the travel blazer has become a must have for someone who it's that it just doesn't wrinkle. It's comfortable and it's versatile, and it doesn't have to be a blue blazer, but a neutral solid or a very muted pattern that just goes with pretty much everything that you could take on a trip, and you can take one blazer and it's going to go with most everything under any occasion. So if you didn't wear suits before, you need at least one great suit, because unfortunately we're going to funerals, there's weddings, and the emergency suit purchases at Miller Brothers are generally because of a funeral and no one has an acceptable suit, which is kind of beyond me, but it happens almost weekly that someone comes in and I have to have a suit like tomorrow. So that's important. A classic blue blazer, maybe a seasonal, a year-round sport coat in a muted pattern. And if you're really into clothes, like so many of our customers are and have nice wardrobes, you still have a couple of fun things, and you buy things because you want to, because you enjoy them, not as much as a necessity, but you do need those core baseline items. And the other thing that comes up is comfortable shoes. Rubber bottom shoes are so important. Uh, Everybody's feet hurt, their back hurts, and shoe world has changed so much that you can buy lace up suit shoes, like a dress shoe, that has a rubber bottom that you can't tell it's a rubber bottom when you're wearing it unless you sit down and cross your legs. And loafers. And we sell probably half of our shoes we sell have rubber bottoms, which is so important. And that's a big thing people are buying more and more of.
Listen, I'm the first one to say, as it relates to this topic in general, I think the wardrobe basics that you hit into retirement, you need, a handful of really good high-end blazers. And then the high-end denims or whatever the casual pant that goes with these is just a must. And then after that is what I call the accessories. Shoes starting right now, really an accessory, but shoes for me have to be comfortable. I'm sorry, I haven't run into one of my buddies that were heading in this direction that hadn't said, look, I'm starting with comfortable first, and what it looks like after that, I don't really care about it, but it'd be great if we can find that combination.
We definitely have been able to. It's not always easy, but there's definitely, we carry about 8 different shoe brands, and we have a very good offering, and it gets better and better.
Tell me,
it's just more to choose from.
so I was reading an article the other day that was giving retirees an example of wardrobe, and they're saying, don't dress like a young man. What does that mean?
That's yeah, that we do hear that I don't want to try and, I want to dress my age, and I don't want to, my girlfriend or my wife, what have you, wants me to dress a certain way and wear slimmer pants. And we do help people push them along and find something comfortable so that is age appropriate, but a fit as like a guy with no rear end. Get older, I think your rear end tends to go away. But
Your belly sticks out. You've got to have something.
I'm not wearing these short rise pants that I can't pull up all the way. I want to be comfortable. So we can do that and find it. You have to try a few things, but we'll figure out what works. So it is age appropriate, and you're not trying to look like you're 25 when you're 65. And we hear that a lot. And got to make your significant other happy, but you have to be comfortable, and there's a balance, and we deal with that almost every day.
And I'm so glad you mentioned the shoes. Let me go down one path. It's accessories. I think something that can make you look sharp and classy and trendy are your accessories. And I'm thinking of a handful of things. Talk to me about accessories within men's fashion that for a retiree can really snazz up their wardrobe and make them look hipper than they probably are.
Well, pocket squares if you're wearing a sport coat, obviously. But if you don't wear a tie, which our tie business is decent because of special events where people are wearing a suit or a sport coat, but pocket squares really help make a difference, show some personality, and we sell a ton of pocket squares, and most men are receptive to it. Even if they haven't worn them their whole lives, people are just for the first time ever able to do that. And we have a really great belt selection from casual to dress with some really interesting belts, whether it's alligator or shark or what have you, some interesting casual belts that are stretch belts that guys love stretch belts because even if they gained a little bit of weight, that belt stretches just a little bit more. So the world of French cuff shirts is not what it once was, but we have a beautiful selection of cufflinks, and actually recently I've sold quite a few, which I love to see. And those are probably, the shoes that we've talked about, but those are kind of the areas I think that pocket square, belts, shoes.
I think that's one other thing. Somebody said having some technology accessories, and I think that's an Apple Watch or at least a modern smartphone. Ditch the flip phone if you still have one. It's embarrassing, but I use that as a joking example. But technology with your wardrobe, as I use the Apple Watch as an example, is just another area that I think really makes you kind of relevant as we age too. And that's just saying that I have to keep up with technology. I'm not a dinosaur.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah. And a lot of the casual blazers and outerwear pieces have special pocketing for whatever, whether it's your phone. Some of them have where I'm not going to say this right, where basically it blocks the people trying to steal your credit card information, things like there's technology built into clothing.
Yeah. No, without a doubt. Wrapping up our podcast, are there any summary statements for those approaching retirement as it relates to fashion, things to pay attention to, or some basics that you want to leave us with and our listeners to today?
I would say that spend the money, go ahead. I was going to mention this earlier is that we talked about weddings and funerals. We do see you go to a service, whatever it may be, and you look around and you see all these people who have a horribly dated suit that's ill-fitting because they're not the same size. And if they run into my brother or I at one of these functions, you're like, oh, no. Inevitably, if we know them well, they're going to show up in the store within the next week and buy a new suit because they've realized they got caught for something they weren't ready for. Generally, it's a funeral, unfortunately. And they know they're embarrassed in what they have on. So it's not that difficult. Come in and see us. We'll talk about it and help you find something that works for you. And it just doesn't take a ton of money to round out your wardrobe and get the things that you need. And so
I think that's right. Spend more money. Quality is what we're doing in retirement anyhow. We've made the
quality,
money.
not quantity, for sure.
Make the investment with you guys for some good looking product. It's just going to pay you dividends. And once again, this is about our identity. If we've hit retirement stage or phase 2, as we call it, the retirement spy, you are successful and you don't want to diminish the identity that's coming through your wardrobe. So I think you've hit the nail on the head. Greg, thank you so much. Tell your brother, Robbie, thank you so much. You guys are great at Miller & Brothers. Is there a website or someplace we can direct our listeners to so they can find you? It's easy to Google, but what's your website?
It is easy, millerbrothers.com.
Please, when you're in Atlanta, always go to see Robbie and Greg at Miller Brothers here in the heart of Buckhead in Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Duncan. Enjoy.